Welcome to the Universal Monsters Podcast, the show whose listeners are very attractive. I'm your host, Jake, author of Devil's League and creator of hot quality content, and with me, as always, the creator and host of Screenplay Archaeology, Kieran Midhead, aka Bruce. How you doing?
Pretty good.
And as per usual, basically a co-host at this point, Xander. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Well, what is this show, you might ask? Well, every month, my fine co-hosts and I break down a bunch of Universal Monster news across movies, shows, theme parks, physical media, and anything else around these classic monsters. After that, we discuss the title topic in the title of the episode. So, are you guys ready for some news?
Sure.
So we got two pieces of news for you guys today. They're both very big, and they're both very recent. So recent, in fact, I don't even have proper notes on them. They just kind of happened within the past 24 hours and so. I'm going to start with the smaller of the two, which if this is the smaller one, that's saying the big one's bigger. Universal's Epic Universe has announced that they are releasing tickets, and it is going to open up in May, which is way sooner than I thought. I thought it was going to be like during like the summer-fall season. I guess May is summer, but that's really early on. I guess that's just like to introduce people to it early on, get some traction, get some positive word of mouth, get some buzz rolling to roll into the fall season, which is going to be their biggest hit with the Halloween season and stuff like that. Single-day express passes start at $129.
Yeesh.
Okay, wow.
You guys want to hear what VIP tickets cost? Because that's good, even better.
Oh boy, what are we paying?
$389. Do you know how many fucking like buckets of popcorn I could get with that kind of money? I mean, geez.
Yeah, you could sell a couple of those buckets and buy us all tickets.
Bro, that's a Nintendo Switch 2 right there. What the hell?
If I sold every single one of those buckets, I could get one and a half VIP tickets, which is pitiful. Really just sad. I can't even bring two people with that kind of money. They are also offering two versions of the experience. It's also the $50 option. You can get the experiment ticket, which I don't know if that's like an addition or if like that's its own thing, but it uses makeup to transform the guests ages 5 and up into monsters like Dracula, Frankenstein, Monster, Bride of Frankenstein. Why not less than 5? That's weird. And then $169, the transformation ticket, uses makeup and accessories to transform guests into werewolves and vampires and more. Interesting. So they're going to not only allow cosplay, but like charge you a lot of money to give you like crazy serious makeup prosthetics and shit. I have not seen a park do that before, to my knowledge.
That sounds like it could be a liability issue.
Sure could. That's why they don't allow cosplay at like any park. Of course, here is the asterisk. The theme park admission is not included with the purchase of express passes. So all the stuff I just said is obviously add-ons. It's like DLC after your $90 fucking AAA game.
Yeah, not paying for that.
Not paying for that. They are...
I mean, I don't know.
It says the prices vary depending on time of year and how many days guests buy. What this really means is they're opening in May and testing this price, and if nobody buys it, they're going to lower the price for fall. Yay. But that's probably not going to happen.
See, that's why I'm saying we wait, Jake. That's why I'm saying we wait.
I'm trying to wait until October, but like, you know.
Gotta wait till Gotta wait till I can come.
Look, I go to Florida at least 2-3 times a year, at least once for MegaCon in February. That's like a big deal for me. So, you know, whenever you guys are down, I'm finna head there like yesterday. That's just me. But Xander seems to want to wait due to logistical reasons, and Bruce wants to wait due to financial reasons. So, you know, we're trying to juggle a bunch of things right now, but
they're both logistical reasons.
I mean, okay. Whoa, hold on. Financial reasons for me as well. It just so happens that logistically sounds...
Well, I mean, how much money did Unseen Obsession make at the box office? I mean, that's gotta have gotten you some serious revenue, right?
Well, you know, I don't want to talk about anything, but you know, it's made about as much. It's made about as much, if not more, than the Devil's League. So,
oh, okay, yeah. So excellent. So we can buy the park next week. Okay, good to hear. Good to hear.
I mean,
exactly.
Screenplay archaeology probably makes even less money than that.
Oh yeah, you're not monetized. You're not getting the pennies per video. Damn it.
Well, I'm actually I'm monetized on the podcast platform, but I have no idea what the pay is like on that.
The other shocking and amazing piece of news, and this, when I heard this casting announcement, I was floored. The Mummy, Lee Cronin's The Mummy, upcoming, which questionable if it's a Universal Monster reboot or not. Apparently, Universal Monsters aren't even part of it. Apparently, it's just Atomic Monster, and Blumhouse. But Blumhouse has done the past 2 Universal Monster reboots, so who knows? Lee Cronin's Mummy has found the 2 stars. Apparently they're the main stars, but we'll see what shakes out in the end. Jack Rayner from Transformers Part 4, The Worst Possible One, and Leia Costa, who is a name that a lot of people have not heard of. I, in fact, have heard of this one person because, unrelated to this piece of news, I have been watching movies on my queue, and I have a queue Google Doc sorted by runtime. So I watch the longest movies first, and I'm working my way down. And at 2 hours and I think 18 minutes, Victoria from 2015 was the longest one, and I just watched the first half yesterday, and then I fell asleep because I was super tired from unrelated reasons. And today, I read the article preparing for this show, and Victoria 2015's protagonist, Leia Costa, who was in this one random fucking German film nobody's ever heard of or seen, which is awesome, by the way. It's a great movie. She is now the star. I'm like, whoa, there's no way. Like, that just, this actress just appeared cast in this thing from that. Crazy to me. Blew my mind. Anyway, she's very talented now that I've actually seen something with her in it. She's super good. Excellent actress. Really knows how to sell every scene she's in. Jack Rayner. What do you guys think of this casting here, this duo?
I've never heard of either of them.
I don't know her. I've heard her name, but I don't think I've ever seen her in anything. Jack Rayner is generally a pretty decent actor when he's not doing stupid Michael Bay dialogue. So I'm fine with him.
What's a Jack Rayner that is in Transformers?
Whiplash.
He's in Whiplash?
Who
the hell was
he's
he
the guy who he's the guy that J.K. Simmons yells at him for adjusting his seat and tells him, "Well, you think there's a pot of gold down there?"
Is that Austin Stowell as the drummer?
Am I mixing up people who look exactly alike?
I think you're mixing up. Austin Stowell looks a lot like Jack Rayner. I'm going to put both of their images on screen right now. I'm excited for the casting. Usually, like, casting news doesn't really do it for me because it's just like, you know, actor wants job, more at 11. Like, woo.
We showed you a chair with a name on it.
We showed you a chair with a name on it for 5.5 hours. But this to me is like, Jack Rayner is one thing, but like Leia Costa. I don't know how to say her name. Insanely talented, obscure actress. I'm really hoping that this brings her into the American cinema front focus here. I hope this kind of gives her more of a Hollywood career because she deserves it. She's super good. It's also distributed by New Line through Warner Brothers Pictures, so Universal is not even relevant to this at all. And yet, it says that it is, in fact, based on 1932's The Mummy. So, if they somehow got the licensing and the rights to base it off this film properly and correctly, like if that is actually what this is, sorry boys, this is in fact a Universal monster movie. It can't not be. If you got the heart attack powers in there, I'm a big happy boy.
Honestly speaking, to be real, as a filmmaker for a second, when I was writing my Mummy script, it's not that tough to like get new. I mean, I really just picked up a Nat Geo of like a Egyptian thing, just kind of like went through stuff to look for like inspiration. And there's so much Egyptian history there that like you can pull out like 50 new characters and something to make some sort of interesting.
Oh yeah. I did I did a big deep dive for mine too. It's funny. I really wanted to write in heart attack powers for the fucking Mummy, but then I thought like, well, a lot of the Devil's League would probably die if they had a heart attack. And then I thought like, well, what if, Franklin or somebody had the heart attack where he could just heal from it. Then it's like, oh, of course he aims at the one guy with the fucking healing powers to have the heart attack. And it's like, So I didn't go that direction. But like, damn, I want to see it in a new movie.
I won't spoil the book for anyone. It's so hard not to do that because you have so many great scenes in that book that I want to like name them,
thank
but
you,
I can't do that because it's just spoilers. But I will say the one unique kill you did for the Mummy, that was really unique and really graphic.
Thank you.
It still sticks in my head to this day.
I wanted it to be like a genuine punch right in your face as a reader of like, oh my god, this is exactly what happened.
It really did. It was, and I again, I can't say much about it to the audience, but I did have to sit down for a second and go, oh god, what the fuck?
And then that chapter just ends.
I mean, one of my favorite characters was murdered by the Mummy that way, and I was like, fuck.
But yeah.
And then I just thought, fuck you, Jake.
I do have one other thing. The interestingly, also Mummy related. The first issue of Skybound's The Mummy just released in the last couple days.
And how is? I assume you've been reading it.
Up at my local comic book store.
I have read it. It's interesting. Basically, what it does is that it's retelling the original movie almost purely from the perspective of Helen. So the first issue is basically her as a teenager growing up in Egypt, and then she kind of runs into the part, kind of like, there's like a scene we didn't see in the original, where she kind of runs into Imhotep right when he awakens. And it's all
cool.
it's all set up so far. There's like setups of like the reincarnation thing where she like sees her previous self in the mirror, and it's going into things being like the fact that she's half English, half Egyptian, and the issues relating around that. It's pretty interesting so far. I'm curious to see where it goes. The one problem I have with it is that these comics have this issue to different degrees. All of them do, where it kind of expects you to have seen the movies. Because there's certain gaps that you won't know what's going on there if you haven't seen them. Like the scene where Imhotep awakes, the context for that is completely gone. It just goes to the guy thinking, "Oh, Dr. Mueller said don't open the box," and then he has a line that is very Stephen Summers, and it's the only line like that in the entire comic. It got a good laugh at me. He goes, "What harm ever came from opening a box?"
Oh.
So he opens the box, reads it, and then Imhotep wakes up, and you're like, reads the scroll. Imhotep wakes up. You have no idea what's actually going on there if you haven't seen the movie. It's a bit confusing.
My whole thing with, like, why I'm kind of turned off by the comics and, like, what I'm hearing about them more and more kind of pushes me away is that I am just so fascinated by the monster characters in each of those stories. And it feels like they focus a lot on the supporting characters and the humans. I mean, you were saying, like, the creature's, like, barely in his own comic. You know, Frankenstein's about the people before the body parts were body parts. Like, I feel like I'm not really getting, like, what I kind of wanted out of those if I were to read them.
Dracula, if you're not a fan of Renfield, you're not really going to get much Dracula out of the Dracula comic, so I guess even...
I do love a good Renfield, don't get me wrong, you know.
I thought Dracula, the biggest
He's
problem...
really cool in that book.
The biggest problem with Dracula is that the first 3 issues are really good, and then issue 4 starts, and it skips over, like, half the plot.
With all that down, let's get into the title topic. We decided to go off the beaten path here, and we decided to talk about why certain films, and we picked one each, are criminally underrated in the Universal Monsters stable. So we each made 5 separate points specifically about these movies, and we haven't revealed what the movies are, but these movies are worth your time and worth revisiting. I guess I'll just kick things off here. I picked 2017's Mummy with Tom Cruise. This one is extremely... I mean, it's unique. There's not a lot of movies like it, but I'm excited to talk about 5 reasons why it's really underrated. Point number 1. I gotta get this off the bat here. This is probably the most prominent one, but the opening narration. Now, we've all heard the phrase, show, don't tell. It, of course, means that when you're making a movie, you need to convey information to the audience. So how do you do that? Well, you can either show the information visually and depict characters and scenes that display it, or tell your audience by just writing narration or dialogue that regurgitates everything. Well, you want to know what 2017's The Mummy does? Let's go back to grade school, because this film was a big fan of show and tell. Not only do you get Russell Crowe in his badass prodigium voice telling this massive backstory at the start of the movie, but you then get her origin depicted visually shortly afterwards anyway. And you know what happens next? You guys aren't even ready for what happens next. After they've told us about her origin and subsequently shown us the exact same origin, they then proceed to tell us a second time, third overall time. This is, I think it's a new filmmaking technique. I haven't seen this done in a lot of movies or ever. I want to call it tell and show and tell. I think we should start teaching this as like an interesting new way to convey information in film schools here. I was really blown away on my rewatch of this film that I did for this show, which I was very excited about, and I was not folding laundry towards. That's point number 1. The opening narration being tell and show and tell, which is just like blow it out. Like, way to really stick it home hard with the audience here of like, this is the information you really got to know, and we're just not going to stop telling you. So that's point number 1 for me. Point number 2, I got to talk about who else? The main guy, Nick Morton. You see, a shocking amount of 2017's The Mummy runtime is dedicated to telling us, the audience, how amazing and sexually competent Tom Cruise's character is. Now, a critical man, might point to the reports about how Tom Cruise and his team had such a heavy hand in this movie. There's a question as to whether Alex Kurtzman even directed it in the first place, or if Tom Cruise just took control and made it himself into the coolest, badass, quippiest, coolest character ever invented. But not I, lads. You see, no siree. Good old Jake the Truth Bomb Chimera is going to hit you with some facts here. Nick Morton is one of the greatest and most interesting characters, I think, in movies. Now, I have 5 points in this point just to talk about why Nick Morton's the best. Ready? Point number 1. He has a friend. Boom. Good character trait. Point number 2. He has sex. Cool guy thing to do, honestly. I wish I had sex.
Yeah.
Point number 3. He's adventurous. See, now we're talking adventure, you know? And point number 4. He spouts trademark zingers while escaping explosions like constantly. And point number 5. He directly causes all of the problems with the movie, but it's okay because he almost resolves them all by the end. That's such a classic Nick Morton thing to do, honestly. Like, you know, you watch a lot of old Universal Monster movies and they have, like, you know, a dude in, like, a suit who's, like, going after a girl who's already married, probably, and he's like, oh, I look like Clark Gable. You want to go out? And she's like, oh, my goodness, I'm in love. Let's get married right now. See, now this movie takes it a new direction. It has Nick Morton being an absolute sleazebag, but he's lovable while he does it, and he screws everything up in every scene he's possibly in. It's like a classic Jack Sparrow, except, you know, it didn't get nominated for an Oscar. I don't know why. Yeah, I love this character. He's great. That's point number 2, is how great Nick Morton is. Point number 3. I got to talk about, it's impossible not to talk about this. The aircraft sequence. There's a scene where the plane crashes and they start plummeting to the ground. Now, Alex Kurtzman wanted to shoot it on wires, but Tom Cruise insisted on doing it for real. And of course, Tom Cruise, you know, had a heavy hand, as some critics would say, but not I, sorry, no, not the Jake the Truth Bomb Chimera. You see, the crew did 64 takes of that scene, eventually becoming sick to their stomachs during the filming. This is actually true. How does this sequence pay off? Well, you'd assume, with a normal, boring movie, that an incredibly complicated, death-defying scene like this would be shot so that you, the audience, could absorb every little detail on screen and really immerse yourself in the stunt work. Instead of that, you see, this is interesting. With proper cinematography and stuff like that, put that aside, they decided to take clips from every single take they shot and just splice them all together so rapidly you have no fucking idea what's even happening anymore. It's disorienting, which of course immerses you in the plane crash as a passenger. Brilliant stuff, honestly. I was blown away on the rewatch there. So the aircraft sequence is point number 3. It's a big deal for me. Point number 4. Let's get into this now. Now we're getting into the real meat and potatoes. Which, if you're an astute watcher of 2017's Mummy, you'll know because it's repeated over and over. It's the exposition. It's the amulet. They spend the majority of the runtime drilling into the audience's head that if the Ahmanet puts this magic gem in this magic knife and stabs someone with it, that person will become the devil and take over the world. They say this about 1.5 billion times. Mm-hmm. This sets up a brilliant bait and switch where Nick Morton stabs himself with it at the end and just is fine. He then uses his devil powers to destroy the mummy, resurrect the only other main character death in the entire film, with Jake Johnson, and then ride off into the sunset, hearkening back to and outdoing the ending of Last Crusade as they do so. Where's your sense of adventure? Well, I'm so glad that we beat me over the head with all of this repeated exposition about the dagger, only for it all to have been completely contradictory to the actual climax of the movie, because that's what makes a great twist. It takes your expectations and subverts them by just flat out lying to you the entire runtime. So the amulet is point number 4 for me. I was really surprised at how well they did that. Point number 5, this might be the biggest point of any point on any list ever written about anything ever. The Dark Universe. Now, let's really dig into this one. To begin and conclude an entire cinematic universe with just one film is ambitious. You look around at every other cinematic universe in Hollywood, what do they all have in common? There's tons of movies. Like, where do I start? I, the viewer, am scared and confused. 2017's The Mummy is the one and only installment. It's the alpha and the omega, together at last. It takes the entire classic Universal monster stable and pares it down to just one singular monster, and then once they're stopped, the credits just roll. I challenge you to make a better, more accessible cinematic universe than the Dark Universe. Frankly, I don't believe it can be done. So that's point number 5, cinematic universe. Exactly. It's similar to the Bloodshot universe, but simply the Dark Universe just does it better. So those are my main 5 points. You got point number 1, I scrolled too far, opening narration. Point number 2, Nick Morton. Point number 3, the aircraft sequence. Point number 4, the amulet. And point number 5, Dark Universe. Why did I say it all again? Because I'm taking after 2017's Mummy and just beating you over the head with the same information over and over and over again. So that's why that movie is spectacular. Underrated. Everyone check it out.
The only thing I have to disagree with is just that the aircraft sequence, when I watched it, you're right, the editing was good, but I feel like it missed something that the trailer showed me. Usually trailers will show you like a song and you think, oh, the songs are good. Where are they? But I remember when I watched the trailer in IMAX, it was really cool because they showed the aircraft sequence, but there was no music and you could just like hear only like certain sounds.
I remember.
Stuff.
Yeah. See, that was.
I thought I was terrified. I was completely terrified.
Me too.
But then they played it in the movie and there was a bunch of sounds and stuff. And I was like, this wasn't as scary. So I personally, as an editor, I think the only gripe I have with the aircraft sequence is that there was too many sounds and they should have kept it with the IMAX trailer.
I completely agree. That would have been my 6th point. Actually, it's funny. You mentioned your point, and I laughed. That's because I was so scared, because you re-evoked those memories for me, and I was so terrified of the scream in the trailer. So it was not because I thought it was funny in any way.
To this day, I still can't rewatch that IMAX trailer without holding on to my security blanket, which is right over there.
Terrifying.
And my doggo.
The way that like they had one sound effect per 3 seconds and nothing in between, just dead air. Dude, that really gets you on edge.
I'll say you make a persuasive case. I only disagree with one thing. They could have made Nick Morton cooler. They could have given him a cooler name, like, say, Tyler Colt.
Oh, or Tyler Rake, perhaps. That would have been cooler, too.
No, I think Nick Morton's a pretty badass name. I mean, Nick Morton.
Yeah, did you want Nick Leston? No, you want Nick Morton. It's smart.
Morton.
Nick Morton. Nick Morton. Ah!
Point number 6, his best friend's name is Jake.
I know. I think that's really point number 1 through 100. But like, I didn't want to be too full of myself here.
Yes.
So yeah, who wants to go next with their underrated film?
I'll go next. Mine should be quick. I decided to take on a bit of a controversial film within one of the classic series, the 3rd film in the Invisible Man series, The Invisible Woman. Now, I'm just going to start off with one of the most controversial things about it is the fact that it went full tilt into comedy for the 3rd movie. And I actually think that this is actually a strength of the film, because if you think about it, the original Invisible Man is half a comedy anyways. So it's really not that far-fetched of an idea to just go whole hog into it and just make it a straight-up slapstick movie, because, hey, in that original movie, he was swinging people by their feet, stealing their pants, running around. Point number 2 is Universal, their most famous female monster is the Bride of Frankenstein, but she's only in her own movie for 5 minutes, and that's all she ever gets in terms of screen time in the entire Universal canon. This is one of the few Universal monsters where the female monster is front and center for pretty much the entire movie, as front and center as an invisible person can be, so it gives you some good representation. Point 3, the comedy in it is a little bit ahead of its time in a way, because it actually dares to be a little bit raunchy by making references to the fact that the Invisible Woman is in fact naked throughout much of the movie. That's very much not the kind of thing you would have seen back then. It's tame by today's standards with all the stupid shit we've gotten from raunchy comedies from the 80s on upwards. But, and it doesn't have a bunch of prosthetic dicks getting shown to us every 5 minutes. But if you think about it in the context of 1940, it's a raunchy comedy. Point number 4, the movie depicts the Invisible Woman fighting back against sexism in the workplace and general workplace abuse by trapping her boss in a window and spanking him. Now, it's done in a very goofy way, and the comedy doesn't quite play all the time. But once again, it's attacking issues that are still very much in the discussion today, and so it resonates. And it's still relevant. So the movie is a relevant film.
It's very scholarly of you. Yeah, I feel like I've learned something so far. You're not even done with your points yet, and I feel like I've learned so much about, like, commentary and criticism and Hollywood and being smart.
I thank you. And my point number 5 is the excellent supporting cast of bit players. Specifically the fact that, in these old Hollywood days, you had a lot of contract players who did a ton of movies, and you'd have familiar faces all over the place. This one in particular has Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch of the West herself, playing a funny enough little role as the mad scientist's housekeeper. She's amusing enough, even if she just kind of disappears from the movie after a bit. And one of the gangster villains is played by Shemp Howard, who is one of the funniest people to have ever lived in history. And he elevates the movie a whole point in its score just by being there. And that, my friends, is why The Invisible Woman is a very underrated film.
Wow. I gotta say, I wish I were an Invisible Woman after hearing that.
I remember when I was doing my research for Unseen Obsession, I did watch it, and I do remember enjoying aspects about that movie. I think I'm gonna have to give it another rewatch, and now with in mind what you've given me.
You
Bruce.
My work
rewatched
here is
Invisible
done.
Woman for... I'm not surprised because it's such a good film and it's classic. And it's, wow. But yeah, wow.
Dare I say it, Elizabeth Banks should try that remake tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, and I hope it's a shot for shotter. I don't want any new innovations on that at all. I want it to be exactly as... In fact, don't even shoot it. Just re-release it. Just copy it, paste it in modern day. It'll work even better. It'll make more box office.
It's due for a re-release.
And
Yeah, I
add
think
some
it's due for a
cocaine.
re-release.
I think we've all gained at least many brain cells after hearing that. I am going to go rewatch that promptly, but only after I rewatch whatever Xander picked. Xander, what in the world could be your most underrated Universal monster film?
I actually came up with this idea. I ran it by Jake earlier because, as many of you know, I'm in production of a vampire short film based off Dracula. And when I do these things, I like to do lots of research. And one of them specifically is rewatching every monster movie related from the Universal Studios scene to get a sort of look. And one of them was Dracula Untold. And, I was kind of talking to Jake about this. And I was like, you know what, this movie isn't half bad. I think maybe if you give yourself, a chance, give another older movie a chance or something, you might find something good. So this is what started all. And really, Dracula Untold, I've given it a few more rewatches since that initial one after I've written the script. And, God, it's just, I'm not gonna lie, it's fucking amazing. For one, who's the main lead actor's name? I'm
Luke Evans.
blanking on it, I always do. Luke Evans, holy shit, this man, fucking phenomenal. I honestly think he is the best Dracula since Bela Lugosi. Might I even say I think he's better than Bela Lugosi. I mean, for one, I can completely understand him. I don't really have points, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have to gush about the film for a second here. First off, one of the things that always bothered me about the original Dracula is that it's really slow, very, very boring, and you have no idea who the fuck Dracula is. Like, every time I watch it and show it to people, everyone's asking me, who's Dracula? What the hell is he doing? What the hell's his deal? How did he become a vampire? And I'm always just kind of like, well, if you read the book, it still doesn't give you much of an answer. I mean, it kind of does.
It's a great response. Who's Dracula? Well, if you read the book, you still don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he does. Bram Stoker didn't do a great job. He sort of sprinkled in something, but, Gary Shore and Matt Sazama, let me tell you, they looked at what Bram Stoker did, and they said, hey, I think we can put together, there is an origin story here that we can find. And you know what? They did it perfectly. They answer everything. And this is in the height of Marvel movies. So the powers they gave Dracula, I mean, it's one for one a superhero movie, and rightfully so. So, I guess that's my first point, per se. And my next point is actually, I have to argue with you, Jake, about Mummy 2017. You say that started the Dark Universe, but I think the Dracula Untold is the actual start of the Dark Universe. I mean, it came out earlier. It's also an action film, and I mean, I'm sorry, Luke Evans is hotter than Tom Cruise, okay? I mean, in that movie, in Mummy, they say, like, how, Tom Cruise, his character, Nick
Morton.
he has
Nick
sex.
Morton.
You actually, Nick Morton has sex. I'm just saying, Dracula actually does have sex in his movie, and he kills a whole army. Pause the podcast, pause everything in your life, go watch it, because the twist is so amazing. He ends up in modern day, and I'm pretty sure this was Universal teasing early on, saying, hey, this guy might come back, because you have Dance going all like, what's up? So I personally think that Dance was meant to be the the Thanos of the Dark Universe films. And I think Tom Cruise and Luke Evans were going to team up with Russell Crowe. But, you know, that's speculation. We're talking about the film itself. If we talk about the practical effects for a second, I mean, there's barely any. A lot of CGI, and this CGI is peak. It's really, really good. The bats, it's so cool. Every time he's running and everything, he like turns into a poof of bats to like really show that speed. And I always wondered, like in the original films and everything, like how does he, you know, get around so fast? Like what vampire scene? You know, Twilight kind of like said, oh, he just runs and stuff. No. Untold came up with bats and stuff, and I think it's cool. And you know what? Robert Eggers must have thought it was cool too, because you know every time Count Orlok teleports, you hear bats kind of in the background. So I think he was ripping off Untold there. Speaking of other movies that ripped off, this is another reason why I fucking hate Wolfman 2025.
Oh no.
Werewolf Vision, werewolf sounds and everything, all taken from Dracula Untold. You got Vampire Vision. I mean, this started everything. And all those parts that were cool about Wolfman, Dracula Untold did it first. I'm just saying. It was really, really good. So with all that said, I have decided to completely... I wiped all the files on my computer. Every take, every shot, every script of my current Dracula film. And I have now begun rewriting a ambitious... fan sequel to Untold that should come out within the next, by the end of the year, hopefully. I've already taken out a second mortgage on my house, and I've sold pretty much every possession. Everything you see here, that's getting shipped soon, hopefully. There will be an eBay listing.
I will support it. I will support that project 100%. Gotta say, a lot of your points here, I'm really resonating. I would argue all of them, actually. I'm really resonating with. I'll disagree about the Dark Universe. You know, Alex Kurtzman has said that explicitly that Dracula Untold is not canon. This is after he said that it was canon, by the way. You know, simple confusion there. So I prefer Alex Kurtzman after a certain year. You're more of an Alex Kurtzman before a certain year where he's totally in agreement with you. Yeah, I see the disconnect there. Totally fine.
We can split hairs all day long, but the proof is in the pudding. I mean, isn't there an actor from Scorpion King in Untold?
Yes, of course there is. There's Zach McGowan of the 2018, the 5th Scorpion King one, the 8th one in the Brendan Fraser saga.
Yeah, Zachy boy. I mean, come on. What's better than Dracula taking on a whole ass army with a fist of bats? I mean, that tells an entire story just within those 5 minutes. It's cinema, really.
I mean, Goku's got nothing on that.
I'd say my favorite point was when you pointed out, like, well, we never knew how he got around so fast. So now that we know that it's a poof of bats, you know, it's interesting because, like, you're right. In no other Dracula media have we seen that. So now questions are finally answers. And I would argue Dracula Untold is a bit of a misnomer. Dracula is certainly told now.
I mean, to give him a whole backstory, to make him this tragic hero, it's honestly inspiring. I do think he makes for a better character than Lawrence Talbot, even.
Personally, like, when I read Dracula, by that I mean when I looked at the cover of Dracula, I don't know how to read. When I looked at the cover of Dracula, I thought, like, this isn't really as good as, like, say, Untold from 2014. You know, did you get that vibe as well? That's what I got. I
mean, I still enjoy the Bram Stoker book, but, you know, I just think Untold did what Bram couldn't. It told, you know, you're talking about show don't tell, or like, you know, like just like, you know, teaching the audience. Bram just couldn't do that with his book. He wanted to just put little bits and speckles. And you know, Gary boy over here, he grabbed those speckles and he stitched it back together like Frankenstein would have.
Fair enough.
I mean, he really succeeded.
I've heard a lot from all three of us, which implies I've heard from myself, about how, you know, these movies are criminally underrated, and I have to come out with a full right admission here. You know, I've been holding this back for quite some time. Yet I wanted to write The Devil's League as like an ode to the Universal monster movies, but sadly I failed because 2017's The Mummy succeeded. Dracula Untold succeeded, and nothing will top Invisible Woman from 1940. So I didn't write the book. I actually just chat GPT'd the whole thing. I just punched in some prompts. I just shat out 23 chapters and the artwork somehow. And I'm a fraud. I just worship these 3 specific movies, and I'll never be a writer as good as any of them. So that's just my point of view. I just had to admit that on the podcast on air now. So
does that mean I can finally say that your book fucking sucks?
Yeah, you certainly can.
I mean, no wonder why would it? Why else would it have brought up the ape woman? I mean, my God.
I know.
I don't know.
Arguably the worst story in the book, but yeah, no way around it. All right. Well, any other closing thoughts on these 3 gems of cinema?
No, I've said my piece.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
All right. Yeah. So with that, we just wanted to wish you, the audience, for listening, a happy April Fools. There were many, many points, especially when Sandra was talking, where like I had to like not laugh. I had to like bite my tongue.
Better character than
Dude,
Larry
I had
Talbot.
to do that with you, Jake.
Dude, there were so many points. First of all, like Bram Stoker did a bad job, even though he invented the fucking character. He fucking sucked.
Knowing you saying that Untold Dracula is a better character than Larry Talbot, that was just...
I was like, whoa.
Really hard on that one.
I waited till the end to get to the most unbelievable stuff, but Jake, I gotta say, yours was really funny. I had to keep covering my mouth not to grin like a fucking maniac.
There were some like, because I wrote down kind of like detailed notes, so there were some things like, once I say this, they're gonna fucking crack. So I tabbed over to Discord and I said the line and I watched you guys kind of like react to it.
I'm just like, yep, be normal.
Yeah.
There was at one point where I was just choking back my laughter.
Dog, like, dude.
You did good, Bruce. You were straight faced. My man could beat anyone in poker, I swear.
Bruce is the MVP of not showing emotion if he had. Like, I granted, I'm only looking at a tiny little thumbnail here, but like he's stone faced. So
he really, my man's stone cold. I was like, damn.
It's lucky for me because my microphone is pretty large, so if I have to, I can just kind of like hide here. But it's so obvious. Like I'm not doing anyone justice.
I feel so bad because like even this was Jake's idea, by the way, for the record, everyone. I just put that there to make it a little bit more funny. But I feel so bad because I was fully just intending to just like talk it. I didn't realize we were writing out points. So Jake has all these bullet points. Bruce does. And I'm just here like, well, I'm just gonna gush about the film and pretend.
I literally wrote my points down in like 10 minutes earlier today because Jake didn't mention until today that we were doing points.
I wonder how far into the title topic the viewer's going to be like, yeah, they're all full of shit. Probably like immediately.
I mean, Jake, you were kind of sarcastic. For me, I was able to kind of get away with more of my ridiculous stuff because I'm always praising ridiculous shit. But you were a little sarcastic in the beginning.
It's hard not to be. I hate this movie so much.
Yeah, Jake, you gave the game away pretty much immediately.
Not well. I think I called myself Jake the Truth Bomb Chimera at some point.
Yeah, you did. I really did rewatch. I mean, Untold's not the worst thing. I'd rather watch Untold than 2017 or Invisible Woman.
That I agree with.
Not that
of the
bad.
three movies, it's probably the least bad of them. Did you rewatch Invisible Woman for your Unseen Obsession research?
I actually did not because when at that point I knew I was like, this is a comedy. It was hard to rewatch during the first time I watched it.
I totally, because you said that
I knew there was nothing
when you were talking about it. I was like, whoa, no fucking way. Like I get like the commitment to the game, you know, like oh I want to watch all the Invisibles, but like goddamn that there's nothing there for you. It's like wow.
Yeah, I knew that because I had rewatched all of them or I'd watched all of them for the first time in order before Anxiety's Moon ever even was a script. So by the time I got to Unseen Obsession or for watching all those films, I was like, okay, yeah, just Invisible Agent next, and then Invisible Man's Revenge. Mm-hmm. We're good.
With that all said and gone, thank you guys for watching the show, and we'll catch you guys next month.
Bye, everybody.
All right.